Today, we're zeroing in on a really fascinating, action-packed couple of years in Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj's life, roughly 1660 to 1662.
Right.
Our sources, they paint this picture of Shivaji facing, well, a whole lot of challenges all at once.
That's quite a complex web, yeah. Not just one enemy, but several moving parts.
Exactly. We've got Bijapur, the Abyssinians and Janjira, the Portuguese, even some internal rivalries. So our mission here is to really understand how he navigated all this, how he managed to consolidate power and even expand.
And what's really striking from the get-go is just how many fronts he was fighting on, figuratively and literally. It wasn't sequential crises, it was simultaneous pressure points. Really shows his strategic thinking.
Okay, let's jump right in then. After the setbacks with Sidi Johar and Fazl Khan, Bijapur must have been furious. The sources say the Sultan himself marched out.
Oh, absolutely furious. The Sultan personally led a large army to Karhad. And the immediate effect, well, a lot of those smaller tributary chiefs who might have been leaning toward Shivaji,
They got nervous.
they got very nervous. They quickly reaffirmed their loyalty to Bijapur, though sources mention it involves some public humiliation. It shows Bijapur still had significant clout, you know.
Makes sense. What about Sidi Johar, though? He was central to the Panhala siege. Did he rejoin the Sultan for this new push?
Interestingly, no. He sought a pardon, sure, but he actually avoided joining the main campaign. There was apparently a lot of infighting and distrust at the Bijapur court.
Ah, court politics.
Exactly. Johar probably figured staying put on his estates was safer than getting caught up in whatever was brewing with the Sultan and his advisors.
So the Sultan pushed on without him. He did manage to take back Panhala and Pavangad in August 1660, right? And some smaller forts too.
He did. Panhala and Pavangad fell, along with some minor forts. But crucially, Rania and Dishalgad held out.
That's significant. Shows Shivaji's defenses weren't completely rolled over.
Definitely. It speaks to the strength of those forts and the determination of Shivaji's garrisons. Faced with that resistance, and critically, the approaching monsoon.
Right, campaigning in the Ghats during the rains is a nightmare.
Precisely. So the Sultan decided to pull back to Chimalj for the rainy season. A strategic pause, essentially.
Okay, so Bijapur pauses. But Shivaji's own forces were apparently weakened too. What was his game plan here? Was he thinking of a big counterattack?
Well, probably not a direct big battle. His army needed time to recover, and the Sultan's force was still formidable. Shivaji's strategy, it seems, was more about patience and attrition.
Letting the terrain and logistics do some of the work for him.
Exactly. He aimed to drag things out, make it a long, costly campaign for Bijapur, wear them down. He figured, rightly it seems, that once the Sultan's strength was depleted, he could move back in and recover lost ground more easily. It's that classic tactic, outlasting the opponent.
So while the Sultan is hunkered down for the monsoon, Shivaji isn't just waiting. He attacks Rajapur again. What was behind that move?
Yeah, hitting Rajapur again served a couple of purposes. One, it showed Bijapur he wasn't intimidated, still active. Two, it hit the British East India Company hard. They had a major factory there.
Ah, and that's where the story of the imprisoned British merchants comes in. Henry Revington and others locked up for 3 years.
That's the one. Shivaji had reasons, though. The British at Rajapur had been accused by Bijapur, actually, of supplying ammunition to Sidi Johar during the Panhala siege.
Okay, so playing both sides, or perceived as such.
And well, perceived as helping Shivaji's enemy, definitely. There were also accusations, possibly true, possibly Bijapuri propaganda, that some British individuals took bribes to help bombard Panhala. So Shivaji saw them as interfering.
And the imprisonment was the consequence. They only got out after paying a ransom.
A significant ransom, yes. Took 3 years, held at Waisadi and later Rigad. A clear message not to meddle.
Right. Now let's shift gears a bit. Internal issues. The sources mention Surve of Sringapur. This wasn't an external enemy, but a Maratha noble.
Correct. Surve had basically set himself up as an independent ruler in Sringapur. Had his own force, maybe 10,000 strong, and was raiding his neighbors, creating instability.
Which Shivaji, trying to unify the Marathas, couldn't really tolerate.
Exactly. Independent power centers raiding each other. That goes against everything Shivaji was trying to build. Surve represented internal fragmentation.
So Shivaji moved against him. How did that unfold?
Pretty decisively. First, he arrested Surve's agent, a man named Pilaji Shirke, signaling his displeasure. Then, he launched a direct assault on Sringapur itself.
And took it.
Took it by assault. Surve resisted, kept fighting for a while, but was ultimately defeated and killed. However, another key figure from Surve's side, Tanaji Shirke, He escaped.
Ah, a loose end. And Surve's followers, where did they go? The sources say Janjira.
Yes, many sought refuge with the Abyssinians of Janjira, which, you can imagine, raised alarm bells for Shivaji.
Yeah, disgruntled fighters joining forces with an existing enemy. That sounds dangerous.
Very dangerous. Potential pincer movement. But Shivaji played it smart. Instead of just chasing everyone down, he reached out to Tanaji Shirke, the one who escaped.
The escaped commander. What did Shivaji offer him?
He offered him Sringarpur itself, granted it to him as an inam, basically a land grant, and some other districts too. In return, Shirke accepted Shivaji's authority.
Wow, that's quite a move. Conciliation rather than pure conquest.
It was incredibly shrewd. It stopped that potential alliance with Janjira dead in its tracks. Surve's former retainers saw their leader reconciled, so they came back. Those fit for service were even absorbed into Shivaji's army.
So he neutralized a threat and boosted his own forces. Clever.
No.
And didn't he later solidify that tie through marriage?
He did. His eldest son, Sambhaji, later married Tanaji Shirke's daughter, cementing that alliance politically and personally.
Okay, speaking of Janjira, the Abyssinians there, they didn't stay quiet for long, did they? Broke a treaty.
No, the peace was short-lived. They started raiding Shivaji's territory again, breaking the recent agreement. For Shivaji, this was another fire to put out, a persistent thorn in his side.
How did he tackle it this time?
He wanted it dealt with quickly. He assigned Venkoji to the campaign, and after a pretty tough fight, they managed to capture Dandarajpuri and the area around it.
A significant gain on the mainland coast.
Yes, and Shivaji immediately started fortifying it. But the main prize, the island fortress of Janjira itself, remained elusive.
Why couldn't they take the island?
They tried a cannonade, bombarding it from the shore, but Shivaji apparently lacked the heavy artillery and perhaps the specialized siege expertise needed to breach a strong island fortress like Janjira at that point. Then the monsoon arrived again, pausing the campaign.
Always the monsoon. Meanwhile, back with Bijapur, things were getting complicated for the Sultan too. A revolt in the Carnatics.
A major revolt, yes.
Yeah.
Just as the Sultan was trying to consolidate against Shivaji, this huge uprising flared up in the Carnatic, a really vital province for Bijapur.
So the Sultan's attention was divided.
Severely divided. His first thought was to send Sidi Johar, remember him, down to the Carnatic. He even invited Johar back with honors.
But Johar refused. Still suspicious.
Still deeply suspicious of the Sultan and the Prime Minister Ibrahim Khan. He refused the command and went back to his own lands.
How did the Sultan take that?
Terribly. He saw it as proof that Johar was in league with the Carnatic rebels, and maybe even with Shivaji. Suddenly, the Sultan is facing crises on two major fronts.
What a dilemma. Fight Shivaji or quell the Carnatic rebellion.
Exactly the debate at the Bijapur court. Some advisors urged finishing Shivaji off, others stressed the Carnatic was more critical financially and strategically.
And then the Sawants of Wadi enter the picture. They offered to help Bijapur against Shivaji.
They did. Lakam and Kem Sawant, the rulers of Wadi down in the Konkan, saw an opportunity. They offered to attack Shivaji along the coast if Bijapur sent reinforcements. The Sultan jumped at the chance.
A way to pressure Shivaji from another direction. Who did Bijapur send?
They ordered Bilal Khan and, significantly, Baji Gorpaid of Mudhal to go and support the Sawants. The Sultan himself would then focus on the Carnatic.
Baji Gorpaid. That name rings a bell. Wasn't he involved in Shahaj's capture years earlier?
He absolutely was. He played a key, treacherous role in capturing Shivaji's father, Shahaji. And Shivaji had a very long memory for things like that.
So when Shivaji's spies reported Gorpaid was in Mudhal,
Shivaji seized the opportunity. This wasn't just strategic, it was personal vengeance. He launched a swift surprise attack on Mudhal.
and Gorpaid.
Gorpaid and many of his clansmen were killed, a brutal settling of scores.
Wow. So much for Bijapur's plan to use Gorpaid against Shivaji. Who took over?
Khawaz Khan replaced Gorpaid, but his command didn't last long either.
Why not?
The Carnatic situation just kept getting worse for Bijapur. They needed every soldier they could get down there. So Khawaz Khan and his troops were soon recalled from the Konkan and diverted south.
This is turning out perfectly for Shivaji, isn't it? Bijapur's forces tied up, their Konkan allies weakened.
It couldn't have unfolded much better for him, really. With Bijapur stretched thin and distracted, Shivaji had a relatively free hand. He rapidly recaptured forts he'd lost earlier
And took new territory too.
and pushed into new areas, significantly expanding his domain, especially in the Konkan.
So what about the Sawants of Wadi? Their Bijapuri backup evaporated. How did they fare against Shivaji alone?
Not well at all. Without Bijapur's support, they were completely exposed. Shivaji's forces rolled through their territories. Kudal, Bande, others fell quickly. There wasn't much resistance.
Where did the Sawant chief end up?
He fled to Portuguese Goa for safety. But Shivaji applied diplomatic pressure on the Portuguese.
And they kicked him out.
They eventually forced him to leave. The Sawants were really cornered. Their only option was to appeal directly to Shivaji.
How did they approach him?
Through an agent, Bijapur Sultan. They apparently stressed distant family ties, appealed for mercy, and offered their complete allegiance.
And Shivaji's response? Did he crush them completely?
No, again showing that pragmatic streak. He pardoned them. He restored their position as Deshmukhs of Wadi, their hereditary title.
But with conditions, I assume.
Oh yes. A hefty annual tribute was imposed. Crucially, their infantry soldiers were absorbed into Shivaji's army, but sent to serve far away from Wadi.
Preventing any local trouble.
Exactly. And Shivaji placed his own veteran troops to garrison their lands. So they kept their title, but their real power was curtailed, and they were now firmly under his control.
He also gained some good commanders from the Sawant's service, Nan Sawant and Ramadolvi.
Yes, two capable men who joined Shivaji's ranks. Ramadolvi in particular was given a large force to secure the Konkan region.
This rapid expansion down the Konkan inevitably brought Shivaji into conflict with another power, the Portuguese.
Yes, his conquest started bumping right up against Portuguese territory. He took places like Panchmahal, Mardangad, even Bardesh, which directly threatened Goa.
How did the Portuguese react initially?
They were worried. Initially, they tried diplomacy, sending an envoy named Anant Shenvi to negotiate peace. But Shenvi apparently had a secret plan.
An ambush.
An ambush plot against Shivaji, yes. But Shivaji's intelligence network was, as usual, excellent.
He'd find out. Who tipped him off?
A man named Kanhoji Tandal revealed the plot. So Shivaji knew what was coming and prepared his own counter-ambush.
So when the Portuguese attacked,
they walked right into Shivaji's trap. The sources mention a large Portuguese force, maybe 10,000, attacking under the guise of talks. They were completely routed. Heavy casualties.
And Shivaji retaliated?
Oh, forcefully. His troops ravaged Bardesh. Portuguese captives were executed, merchants fined heavily. He even set up Maratha cavalry posts within Bardesh.
Effectively occupying the land approaches to Goa.
Pretty much. Putting intense pressure on the Portuguese. They realized they were facing a serious threat, potentially the loss of Goa itself.
So the failed ambush led to genuine peace talks.
It did. The Portuguese quickly sent ambassadors, this time genuinely seeking peace, apologizing for the earlier treachery.
What were the terms of the treaty?
It was quite favorable to Shivaji. The Portuguese agreed to supply him with cannons and jewelry annually. In return, their merchant ships got safe passage warrants, cartazes, in waters controlled by Shivaji.
A significant climb down for a European power shows Shivaji's growing stature.
Absolutely. He was dictating terms to the Portuguese in Goa.
Meanwhile, how was Bijapur viewing all this? The Sawants defeated, the Abyssinians weakened, Shivaji making deals with the Portuguese.
They were lamenting, basically. The sources say they recognized that recovering the Konkan was now almost impossible. Their allies were gone or neutralized.
And no Bijapuri general wanted the job of fighting Shivaji.
None were willing. The task seemed hopeless and probably very dangerous for whoever tried. The political climate in Bijapur was likely still volatile too.
So what did Bijapur do? Just accept the situation?
It seems the Grand Vizier, perhaps seeing the writing on the wall, took matters into his own hands. He secretly opened peace negotiations with Shivaji.
Secretly? Why?
Probably anticipating opposition from hardliners at court who wouldn't want to formally concede so much to a former vassal.
And these secret talks led to an actual treaty. What were the terms? This seems huge.
It was monumental. Though perhaps informal at first, the understanding was clear. Bijapur would recognize all of Shivaji's conquests. They'd stop trying to take them back.
So recognizing his territory, what else?
Recognition as an independent sovereign, essentially. Ceding certain districts officially. And, astonishingly, Bijapur agreed to pay Shivaji an annual tribute.
Bijapur paying tribute to Shivaji.
7 lakhs of Huns annually. A massive sum. It flips the whole traditional relationship on its head.
Unbelievable. Was there anything else? An alliance?
A defensive alliance was part of it, yes. And Shivaji was allowed to have a permanent ambassador, Shamji Naik Pandey, at the Bijapur court.
Why would Bijapur agree to all this? Just sheer exhaustion.
Pretty much. Military exhaustion, financial strain from the Carnatic War, the lack of willing commanders, this strategic reality. They had little choice. It was a stunning admission of Shivaji's power.
And didn't Shivaji's father, play a role in cementing this peace later on?
Yes, the sources mention Shahaji later advised Shivaji to maintain this new friendly relationship with Bijapur, and Shivaji, respecting his father's counsel, did cease aggressive actions against the Sultanate for a time.
So by 1662, Shivaji had achieved, well, more than maybe anyone thought possible just a few years earlier.
Definitely. From being a thorn in Bijapur's side, a regional Jagirdar, he'd become a recognized independent power. A king in all but name, really.
And the fact that Bijapur, the established kingdom, was paying him tribute, that must have sent shockwaves.
It astounded everyone. It completely upended the political hierarchy of the Deccan. It proves Shivaji wasn't just a rebel anymore. He was a force to be reckoned with, a state builder.
Can we get a sense of the scale of his holdings by 1662? What did his territory actually look like?
Yeah, the sources give us a good estimate. He controlled the Konkan coast, pretty much entirely, from Kalyan down to Goa. That's about, 300 miles long?
Wow, the whole coast. And inland.
Inland, the uplands, the Desh region, from the Bhima River down to the Warna River, roughly 160 miles long and maybe 100 miles wide. A substantial territory.
And his military strength to hold it.
Estimated around 50,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry. A large army, but necessary given the constant threats from powerful neighbors like the Mughals waiting in the wings. In Bijapur, even if weakened.
So looking back at these 2 years, 1660 to 1662, it's just an incredible display of maneuvering.
It really is. Military action, diplomacy, dealing with internal rivals, neutralizing coastal threats, forcing recognition from a major power. It's Shivaji consolidating his base in a truly masterful way.
You see him respond to multiple simultaneous threats, adapt his strategy, use both force and conciliation. It's a pivotal moment.
Absolutely pivotal. The gains were huge. The recognition from Bijapur was groundbreaking. It really set the stage for everything that came next. It proved his vision wasn't just a dream, it was becoming a reality.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. Faced with all these different challenges, Bijapur's army, Janjira's raids, Surve's independence, Portuguese plots, what do you think was the single most crucial factor in Shivaji's success during this specific period? Was it his military skill, his spies, his diplomacy, his ability to inspire his people, or maybe just exploiting his enemies' weaknesses?
That's a great question. You could argue for any of those, really. His military was key, but the diplomacy was shirkus. The pressure on the Portuguese, the timing against Bijapur, it's all interconnected. Perhaps it was his ability to see the whole board and make the right move at the right time, more than any single element.
Lots to consider there. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.